The longest film in history was released in 2012. It's an experimental Swedish film called Logistics, and it has a runtime of 51,420 minutes, or 857 hours, or 35 days and 17 hours. And while our marathon viewing of the Fast and Furious franchise wasn't nearly that long, it felt like it could have been. And were the franchise's total running time to be considered on the list of the longest films ever made, it would have come in 14th. My colleague and I both had the day off of work for National Liberation Day, commemorating the South Korean defeat of the near 50-year era of Japanese colonial rule. Though the holiday lands on August 15th, the South Korean government designated Monday, August 17th as a temporary national holiday, allowing workers in the nation to have 3 consecutive days off as compensation for the effects of the coronavirus epidemic. What better way to celebrate the hard-fought independence of a nation than to force-feed ourselves nearly 1,000 minutes, or about 16 hours, of Vin Diesel muttering in a false baritone about the importance of family, or Paul Walker's unnervingly wooden acting abilities, and seemingly endless party scenes centered around streetcar races in which throngs of young women in the most cliché, faux Japanese schoolgirl outfits grind upon and make out with each other for the viewing pleasure of the franchise's original target demographic, horny teenage boys. And that just reductively describes the first 4 movies, not to mention the seismic shift in tone and scope of the latter 4, where the central crew qua family become agents of the state, working both for and sometimes against the FBI, the CIA, and other deep state outfits, both real and imagined, where their once low-stakes adventures in Los Angeles involving small-time heists of stereo equipment and entanglements with undercover police operations gave way to driving cars outfitted with parachutes out of high-altitude airplanes in order to infiltrate impossible-to-reach parts of the mountainous terrain of Afghanistan. Our relatively humble protagonists morphed into supernaturally gifted super spies who hop around the globe, thwarting national security breaches and plots to strike at the heart of American freedom with nuclear weapons. And the street races, the street races have sadly all but completely vanished into the ether. Today we discuss our reckless viewing of the franchise and see if there's anything redeeming to be found in the detritus left in this marathon's wake.
He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere 200 animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it.
And lo, for the earth was empty of form, and void, and darkness was all over the face of the deep, and we said, look at that fucker dance.
Welcome to Heat Death of the Universe from Seoul, South Korea. Hard time stamp, August 19th. The year is 2020, and the time is 2:46 p.m. Korea Standard Time.
Off to a late start.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know what time it is anymore. Time is a flat circle, as the Fast and Furious franchise has taught me.
Time is a bit relevant.
Irrelevant?
No, relevant. It's very important, time.
Oh, like 1/4 mile at a time?
1/4 mile at a time is how Dom lives his life.
Dom. Who's Dom, by the way?
He's the lead character of the Fast and the Furious franchise.
Why would you bring that shit up?
Prove me wrong. He's in at least... How many movies are there? 20? He's in at least 15 of the 20 movies. He takes a short break.
I think the real stats are he is in 6 of the 8 released films. 9 released films if you count the spin-off one, which maybe some purists don't count. But anyway, why are we even talking about this movie franchise?
I feel like there's not many other movie franchises in my lifetime that's been running basically parallel to everything that's happened since 9/11. The first film came out 3 months before 9/11, and they've kind of cataloged the entirety of American life from that point. And I thought it'd be interesting to watch this franchise that has basically been with us through these dark times and see if I could glean anything about the world from them.
Yeah, we are seeking enlightenment through extremes. Some people eat like ayahuasca or other psychoactive materials. Some people fast for prolonged periods.
Others do ultramarathons.
And some people sit on the couch for about 16 hours straight watching Fast and Furious movies from 1 to 8. And those people were us recently. A few days ago, was it?
Yeah, I mean, as a new initiative to the film franchise, I can say that I became more and more excited as the films went on.
Yeah. We should mention that neither of us had ever seen a single one of these movies before. What's your relationship to the franchise before this maybe ill-advised experiment we did? Like, what did you know about it? What did you think about it? Like,
Fast cars go vroom.
do you remember when the first one came out? Like,
sure, I remember.
Where were you? What were you doing? How old were you? Did you care?
I was
Did you want to see it?
Probably 17 years old. I say I've never seen it, but I probably saw clips of it here and there. I'm sure it's been on in the background in different areas of my life, because it's kind of hard to avoid something as popular as that and not like pick up parts of it.
Yeah, I probably heard some vroom vrooms in the background as well.
No, I couldn't say I was particularly interested in watching it. I was a bit more pretentious with everything then.
Yeah, me too.
It was part of my image.
Sadly. It never even crossed my mind to watch any of these movies ever until maybe a couple of years ago when I heard some people that I generally respect talking about how kind of what bad fun some of the later ones are, but I still never felt the need to check them out until you raised this strange idea to watch all of the movies in one sitting just to see what would happen.
I had also heard murmurings that some of the later films rival some of the biggest blockbusters of the day, and like in a way that they're their own weird series of superhero films.
Yeah.
I was curious about this.
I mean, it definitely made a lot of money. Like, I think they've made more and more money, like every movie, basically. I could be a little wrong about that, but they became like much bigger as they went along. Like, I think past the fourth and fifth ones, it's when they became like a mega franchise that is probably never gonna go away. I think like Vin Diesel's children will take over once he's gone.
Well, they're part of the family.
Well, the family, of course. This is real family too, but
Do you think there was any cultural enlightenment from these movies?
For us?
For us, yes. Do you feel like
The marathon? Did the marathon enlighten us?
Do you feel like you're more in tune with the past 20 years now that you've like fast forwarded through 2 decades?
I gotta say, probably not much, if at all. Like,
Oh,
how do you feel about it?
I feel the same way, but it turns out from some Wikipedia searching that maybe every movie is set in between the first movie and the third movie.
I did look into that. That is true until the 7th movie.
So there's a time jump.
There's some weird chronology stuff because of the biggest failure of the franchise, which was the Tokyo Drift, the 3rd movie, which doesn't have any of the stars from the previous 2 movies, and so they, for whatever reason, I don't know what the reason, they just shoved all the other movies in between the chronology of the 2nd and 3rd ones until the 7th, which jumps over them, which I think they did just because they wanted to use like smartphones and more modern technology and modern cultural stuff.
You would say that doing something like that could give the movies almost a timeless quality. Do you feel like it added a timeless element to it to have everything shoved in between the good years of
Yeah, what would those years have been?
I guess those years would have been the Bush years?
Well, they were the Bush years. I think specifically the second one was like, I think I wrote it down here. So it would have been between 2003 and 2006. So we're to believe that movies 4, 5, and 6 all take place between those years. Yeah. What was going on those years? Let's see, 2003, beginning of the Iraq War.
That was a thing? Is it over?
I mean, that's what they will have you think. It's done, but it's not. I mean, not really. But I sure remember that much more than I remember the second Fast and Furious movie coming out. The lead up to invading Iraq was a pretty big deal. Yeah, they don't really touch on any of that in any of these films.
I don't think there's an actual terrorist in the movie until like part 6.
It's so blurred together in my mind. I know for sure the 8th one has what's considered some terrorism. That's the cyber terrorist. Charlize Theron's character, Cypher.
Right.
She's called a cyber terrorist at least. And she does some stuff with a nuclear weapon.
She uses remote control cars to try to take over the world, right?
Is that what happened? I'll just take your word for it. So folks, like, what we're trying to get at here is we're still kind of like hungover from watching these movies, and that was a few days ago.
Yeah, I'm still digesting everything I've seen.
Actually, that was only 2 days ago.
It wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, that's why it feels so fresh. Our sleep patterns are all messed up and so on. But that was part of the whole experience, I guess, which we're bringing to you now. There's like a clear progression from the first movie in 2001 to the most recent in 2017. I don't know about anything super insightful, like culturally, but like just the way the movies operate is kind of funny how far they come from the first movie to the most recent.
They start as simple thieves, try to steal TVs from the back of trucks.
And where do they end up?
They end up as multimillionaires working with the cops to protect government assets, I think.
And not even just the cops, but like the big federal cops. I thought it was the FBI, but it's actually the I forgot the name of it already.
I do think an interesting through line of all the movies is the more rich they become, the more they the more on the cops' sides. Or the more the cops side with them, really.
Yeah, a closer and closer alliance is built with authority, particularly like federal government agencies. Like I just looked up what it was called. So The Rock, Dwayne The Rock Johnson, his character works for the Diplomatic Security Service. I thought it was the FBI because I wasn't paying super close attention by that point in the marathon, but I mean, it might as well be the FBI. It's pretty similar.
They're all basically the same.
And it just seems like this one has more jurisdiction, like
globally.
Globally,
internationally.
Yeah. So yeah, this ragtag group of street racers. That's what, like, it's just hilarious to remember that the first movie was like these people doing like low stakes cash bets in street races in LA, and by the time they get to not even this most recent one, but by probably like the fourth or fifth movie, they're basically working with and against occasionally like FBI level, and like eventually CIA gets brought in at certain points. They're doing counterterrorism work. They're one of the parts that sticks with me is a scene in, I'm not even sure which movie it was. I want to say 6 or 7, where the crew they are all in a gigantic airplane, and they're all in their cars, their cool cars in the airplane, and they skydive out of this airplane from in their cars. It's one person in a car.
That
each.
Actually might be my favorite scene in the entire franchise.
It is.
It also stuck with me as like the most ridiculous and amazing.
And do you remember why they were doing that, though? I do.
I think they were trying to secretly get into some type of enemy compound.
Yeah, it was a part of Afghanistan that they said was virtually impossible to enter except from the sky. And they're not going to land in some mountainous terrain in enemy territory without their cool souped-up cars. So their cars came along.
How would they get anywhere?
Well, their cars came along for the skydive is the hilarious part. And, yeah, they literally drive their cars out of an airplane and pull the parachutes open and go from there.
It's like a metaphor of what America believes it is.
Which is what?
You can just go to whatever country you want,
Right.
parachute our stuff in, and
Our toys.
start driving it around.
Yeah. And then I don't, like, again, this is going to be kind of the running theme of the episode. I don't quite remember the specifics.
No,
of
me
what,
either.
Of what happens after they land from that scene.
It's a
but
lot of movies.
I'm pretty sure they probably kill a bunch of people at that point. That's the other thing that changes throughout the franchise is, like, I believe not a single person, even a bad guy, dies in the first movie.
No, one of the characters dies. One of the team dies.
Oh, really?
The computer hacker guy.
See, I don't even remember a computer hacker.
He was the nerdy looking kid.
I don't remember at all. I just remember the truck scene at the end and all the shit that we were laughing at in the beginning of the first movie, which was like the really dated music like Limp Bizkit and all the new metal.
He was the kid that got shot in the Yakuza drive-by shooting.
I remember the fake Yakuza group, but I don't remember anyone getting shot, I guess, or dying. But anyway, okay.
Pivotal point of the movie, Josh.
But we were expecting like more deaths, right? Like we thought the guy Vince, one of the only characters I remember the name of, we thought he was going to die for sure in the first movie when he's like hanging off that truck in like the only good sort of action sequence of the movie. But he lives way into the franchise. Spoiler alert.
He does eventually die. I'll just go ahead and ruin it for everyone.
Did he die too? I can't remember.
I remember them having some type of funeral for him, but I don't necessarily remember how he died.
Do you remember? Was it like
movie
movie 6,
movie
7?
6. I want to say movie 6.
6 I think was the one where they're in Brazil, and I remember that's where that character comes back.
I've noticed that I'm way more focused on death than you.
No, 5 was Brazil. I'm looking at my notes, which also look like the ravings of a lunatic. I think I might post a picture of these notes because they're kind of funny to me. At one point, I think deep into the psychosis of watching these movies, I just wrote the word family in big letters across the bottom. And
It's kind of a theme.
it's a huge theme of these movies.
Except for the second and third movie.
No, even in... Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess it's true because Dom is not in those movies.
The theme of
let's just call
family.
him Vin Diesel. I don't know. Maybe I could see myself getting confused listening to a podcast where people keep using his character name.
I think whenever Vin Diesel thinks of family, he sees them as street sharks.
We're 100% gonna link in the notes, the episode notes, to the sort of... It had a viral moment a few years ago, the Vin Diesel YouTube video of him at a 1994 toy convention where he's got hair, which is weird to see. He's in like a leather vest with no shirt underneath, and he's very excitedly introducing the audience to and playing with Street Sharks action figures. And he's like literally playing with them like a kid would. He's going like, pow, sock 'em, rock 'em. You know, that's a good impression, right?
One thing about the movies is often the street races or the playing chicken in the last movie, those are a lot like kids playing with toy cars.
That's true, yeah. It looks like a Micro Machines session gone mad. Something like that.
Without that one controlling kid's like, no, that's not possible. We're not playing it that way. You gotta keep it real.
Oh, like I see what you're saying. So like, it goes from like just driving on the ground to the whatever it was, the sixth
skydiving
movie.
planes.
Yes, skydiving with cars. Yeah,
driving one car from a skyscraper to another skyscraper.
And oh yeah, that's movie 7. That part I really remember well.
Somehow having cars land on boats. I don't know how the car got on the boat, but a car was on a boat.
Climbed up into the boat, man. What's there to question about that?
So weird. It didn't even grow legs.
And we should also disclose that we've seen the very like long trailer for the upcoming 9th movie, which is I guess the release has been pushed back probably because of coronavirus, but it's coming out in April. And that movie looks like they're continuing to up the stakes. There was a scene with a stealth bomber plane
that has magnets.
Yeah, a huge magnet that can pick up cars out of harm's way. And I think Ludacris yells something about, "Oh hell no, that ain't a magnet plane, is it?" I may be misquoting a bit, but that's the sentiment. Yes, also, Ludacris is one of the actors who's been in the franchise for a long time. I think he's not in the first one, and maybe not in some of the other ones, but mostly been in like the last one, like 5 of them or something. Not that there's anything really interesting about that. He's very unfunny, is my opinion. He's supposed to be also like the comic relief of the cast, and he's pretty terrible at it. But specifics aside, I mean, like we're getting so specific, but I mean, there's obviously like when you watch 8 movies in a row, we're gonna see some kind of like themes develop, right? Like, was there anything you saw in this film that like translates to any like real ideas about, let's say, culture and politics?
Well, I mean, I hinted at it. No, I just stated it earlier, but the more money you have, the less the cops fuck with you. And this is definitely like the case in the movies too.
Well, and the more you become the cops, it seems like.
Yeah, it seems like the more well off you are, the more you want to work within the system.
Yeah, that's definitely the case in these movies. Like there's a lot of antagonism between the police and the crew, as we'll call them, or the family. Like in the first film, the main plot of the first movie is that Paul Walker is an undercover cop who's infiltrated this group of illegal street racers, right? And that goes on for like the first two, maybe even into the fourth movie. But pretty soon after that, even Paul Walker, the cop, like abandons his police post and just becomes part of the crew, the globe hopping crew, and working with powerful government agencies and living a life of luxury, more or less. Yeah, they all become rich eventually, right?
Yeah, it seems like they're rich.
But then that's one of the funny things is, they're definitely rich, and they're definitely like on the side of the powers that be by the time the seventh movie rolls around. And the climactic scene in the seventh movie, I believe this is when you had reached your limit and fallen asleep.
Drifted into dreamland where I
part of me wanted to wake you up, but the other part of me was like, that would just be so cruel right now.
It's all right. I plan on finishing what I missed.
Okay.
Sometime in the future.
I mean, the seventh one was probably the most like purely entertaining, I gotta say. That's the one with the leaping out of the skyscrapers in Dubai, I believe. Leaping out of a skyscraper in a car into another skyscraper. But what was I saying? Oh, right. So the climactic scene of the seventh movie is a really ridiculous, like, hand-to-hand combat fight between Jason Statham, who shows up in these movies eventually, and Vin Diesel. And at one point, they're just hitting each other with like big metal poles that they found on the ground or something, and it looks like just straight up like something out of a Marvel movie, like climactic battle scene. But they're fighting, and somehow, I don't even remember how, like the ground literally starts cracking open beneath them, and the ground is the street, of course. And
of course it is.
Vin Diesel has the line, I may have even written it down. Yeah, he says, "The thing about street fights, the street always wins."
I feel like he says this line in more than one movie.
He might, but that's the first time I noticed it because it was so hilarious by the time you're in the seventh movie, and he's like basically a CIA operative who's a multi-millionaire, and he's still talking about how he's from the streets and how the bad guy is like, you know, the bad guy is not even like a rich industrialist or anything as far as I remember. He's just trying to get revenge for his brother, who they kill in an earlier movie. So the messaging is all warped and fucked up. Like, it just doesn't make any sense.
Well, his brother was the creepy gangster guy, right?
Yeah, Luke Evans. I remember the actor. And they don't kill him. They like put him in a coma, I think. In any case, the streets always win. Like, whose streets? What are you talking about, Vin?
What do you mean, Vin?
Vinny, we're family here. Oh, also, the egregious product placement in these films is there from the get-go, right?
It made me miss Sobe.
Yeah, there's a Sobe product placement in the first movie. We see a Pizza Hut delivery driver,
which was the only traffic in all of the movie.
that was one of your pet peeves, was that there's no traffic on the streets
in East LA.
Yeah,
the only people who drive the streets are street racers and truck drivers,
and a pizza delivery guy for the scene that promotes Pizza Hut,
and cops. But if I've learned anything from these movies, street racers and cops are just opposite sides of the same coin.
That's what the first one would maybe have us believe, I guess, because the way that one ends, I think, is with Paul Walker and Vin Diesel kind of begrudgingly respecting each other, but still not quite being brothers yet, as they say later in the movies.
I guess it's a common theme, criminals and cops being the same thing.
Oh yeah, that's a real cliche.
I remember The Wire doing something about that.
Well, some
not as well as the Fast and Furious did, though.
I'm glad you cut off my legitimate point about The Wire doing it well. That would have been boring. Yeah, I mean, some movies, TV shows, whatever, can use that cliche well, and some, like this franchise, do not.
I
Um,
I honestly think I liked the quote unquote family more before they were on the side of the cops.
well, yeah, but those movies were also way more boring.
That's true.
Like the early movies where they're still like, even you can kind of argue that they're still from the streets or whatever. Those are the most boring of the movies. Like I would just say like the first 3 or possibly 4, I can't quite remember. I think it starts to get a little more interesting at around 4. But the first 3 for sure are like, you couldn't pay me to watch those again. But like some of the later ones I could see like having a few dozen drinks along with and enjoying, like,
Yeah, like a Marvel movie.
yeah, but I mean these movies are even more absurd, I feel like, because there's a pretense of like realism
I agree.
in a way.
They're notched up to like 7 or 8. Where let's put Crank at like a 10, which is me and you talked about being one
Yeah.
of the better action movies ever
And
made.
Crank is very intentionally over the top, and you could argue maybe the Fast and Furious movies have been for a little while, but it seems a little less self-aware than, say, a movie like Crank.
I do think the last movie was fairly self-aware for the Fast and the Furious.
7
But-
or 8, the 8th one.
The 8th one.
Yeah, I mean, like the nuclear submarine, and yeah, it is. I mean, I think you could even say by the time they get to the skydiving cars, like they're winking a little bit at the audience. But I think also part of them was just like, this will look badass.
You should definitely not test skydiving cars at home, but if you have the means to skydive a car at home, please use your means for something better.
Is this your PSA?
Yes, if you have the means to skydive a car at home, please consider using your means for anything else.
The more you know. What did I still wanted to throw in a few more things about the product placement. Although I don't know what else to say about it other than the biggest by far product that lasts throughout all of the series is Corona, and not the virus, haha, the beer. They are constantly swilling Corona in these movies, especially during what I started to think of as the family scenes.
The picnics.
Yeah, they're usually having like a barbecue, or I don't know if they would call it a picnic.
Yeah, I
Picnic
guess it's
sounds
not a
so
picnic.
romantic. These are like it's like family style, hanging out, grilling in the backyard, or as the movies keep progressing, I think like by the Dubai one, they're like having like a catered meal on top of a
These characters are from the street, but
huge
even in the
building.
first movie, they own a nice house in California.
I mean, nice to schlubs like us, but
Well,
yeah.
Nicer than any house I've ever owned.
That's what I'm saying, to
Well,
schlubs like
never
us.
owned a house, but one day I probably never will own a house.
Yeah, that's fine.
The
though.
trajectory of my life is to be a man without property.
Just a renting sucker like me.
Fucking landlords.
So these films, like we mentioned that this main crew, like the more money they make, the more influence they seem to get in the halls of power. But also, like, what I found really hilarious, and then kind of sort of interesting, is how all these movies, like, they take the enemies of their enemies from movie to movie and gradually, like, bring them into the fold of their crew, like and it's literally like the franchise itself, like, subsuming its villains and its critics with however they do it, sort of by magic in a way. Like Paul Walker, he's basically the enemy of this
of the
group
family,
of the family, but then he becomes part of the family. And I mean, I guess the way they do it is he's like in love with Vin Diesel's character's sister. They have a kid together, so he quite literally becomes part of the family. But like then the character, like The Rock, he's like this pissed off government enforcer type who hates them, like really hates them. Him and Vin have a few knockdown, drag him out moments, and he very quickly becomes just as much a part of the family as anybody else. I believe that also happens with Jason Statham between the 7th and 8th movie. And from what we saw in the trailer for the 9th one, it's possible that Charlize Theron's character will somehow also, even though she tried to like blow up the world with nukes, she may also just become part of their family by the end of the 9th movie.
I don't condone blowing up the world with nukes, but I completely get why someone would want to do it. Have you been following the news lately?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah, I just think that there's this... Okay, so this... On the level of the reality of the movie, they're subsuming their enemies, right? And just turning them into themselves. Like, turning them into their...
part of their
their family, their way of life. And the film franchise, on the level of being a real film franchise, is... in a way, although this thesis breaks down, but I'll just say, even like film critics themselves gradually got kind of like broken down and subsumed by the franchise into saying that it actually had redeeming qualities.
It's true. The early reviews are bad.
Yeah, I think even of the first movie, which was successful, but critics certainly didn't think it was great. But I think by around, say, the movies 4, 5, 6, that sweet middle period, I think the critics, even though they knew it was like they were like dumb action movies, were giving it better reviews at least, and it was gaining more like cultural cachet to some degree.
Is this because of the dumbing down of America?
Possibly. It also because, I mean, I think it just has to do with being bowled over by financial success. So, like, when a movie becomes as massively successful as, say, I believe the 5th one was,
yeah,
more critics are sort of likely to, like, give it a pass at least, if not, like, actually praise it as being like a fun popcorn movie, a fun, dumb summer blockbuster. I don't think they were saying that about, you know, the first, second, third movie. Definitely not the third movie. The third movie was notoriously
the second
panned.
and third one both had really bad reviews. The first one, I think, has mixed reviews. Some people liked it. Some people were like, what the fuck is this?
Yeah.
Why make this? Just go watch Point Break.
You said something before about the Point Break connection. I didn't quite get that. I mean, there is the skydiving scene, but that's in the way later movie. But
no, the Point Break connection is it's an undercover cop who who
infiltrates
a subculture of criminals and then grows to respect them and see them almost as family.
Okay, so that's a clear ripoff then. Why didn't I get that?
Even the director, whose name I always forget, because I'm bad with directors' names.
Of the first movie?
Yeah, of the first movie.
Rob Cohen, notorious schlock peddler Rob Cohen.
He wanted to make the movie... I read this from a Vice article, of all places. Originally, the movie was supposed to be based on a news article called Racer X, which was about street racing culture in East LA. In like the late 90s, 98 or so. And when Columbine happened, they had to like scrap the whole script because originally it was going to be like almost a Romeo and Juliet plot where there's like two street racing families and the character that Paul Walker plays was going to be from the other street racer family, and he falls in love with like the King Street Racer's like sister, but the families hate each other.
That is kind of what happens still in the
It
franchise.
is,
But he's
it-
not a street racer.
It didn't have any authority figures, a lot of cops, and this is right in the heat of like America freaking out over terrorism, and they're like, not just terrorism, but also Columbine, et cetera,
Yeah,
et cetera. And you can have like
shootings.
warring families, and Universal said, no, we cannot make this movie, so they rewrote it as basically an inspired from Point Break sort of thing, where it's like, why don't we just do it where we have a cop infiltrate this subculture?
That's the key. Put a cop in it. It sounds actually like a better movie without the undercover cop angle, honestly.
I think it would too, because sometimes the undercover cop angle felt a bit stapled on.
And it was just dull. Like those
Yeah.
first two movies are fucking dull. Like painfully dull. Yeah, that's interesting. Man, it sounds like you did more research than I thought you did. But
Just a little. Not much, though.
it's an interesting glimpse behind the curtain there. Yeah, I had no idea that, like, you said the word Columbine. I was like, holy shit, where are you going with this? But no, I got it. That's interesting. So yeah, I think this is a very, suffice to say, this is an extremely pro-capitalism franchise.
Very much so. It's
and-
all about buying a car and then spending all the money you have to upgrade your car.
But it's also about like how you can just, through the power of money, you can buy off the cops. You can not even just buy off the cops. You can turn your enemies into part of your family, which is just, to me, another way of saying like a corporation like merging or just eating up another corporation.
Money subsumes everything.
And it's definitely portrayed as a positive thing. It's like, but in the movie, it's portrayed as like, oh, look, people setting their differences aside, but they're not really. Like they're just trying to kill each other like 10 seconds ago, and then suddenly they're like partners for life. They're family. They're cracking Coronas together and like holding each other's babies and shit.
Well, that's the machoism of capitalism, right?
That's what. That's in the. I think it's in the 8th one. Jason Statham, who was like literally trying to kill Vin Diesel like a movie prior, is at their like family barbecue, and he's like holding
Their kid.
one of the sister's kids, like and like being all like having a little like cute moment. And yeah, I mean, it's fucking hilarious because it's like sort of unrealistic human behavior, but then when you sort of view these groups within the film as like, say, a company, like a corporate entity, like it has a very, very pro what's the word I'm looking for, cutthroat capitalistic message for sure.
Well, even trained killers can appreciate a baby.
Okay, so maybe it's more realistic than I thought.
I'm not sure.
I know. Yeah, shit. I don't know if there's much more of like any sort of deeper level to read these movies on. There might be, but I'm still like reeling from our what felt like a sort of bizarre multi-day like drug experience or something. But
going into it, I kind of expected to pick up more cultural, more just like changes in culture throughout the movies, and there was less of that than I expected. And some of that could have just been that they were all set between like 3 years, and I didn't realize that going into them.
That's part of it, I think, for sure. Because, yeah, you don't see any, like, cultural signifiers really changing that much. Like, the nu metal vanishes but after, like, at least after the second movie.
To be replaced by dubstep?
There was a lot of dubstep. There's a lot of, like, what I kept thinking, I don't know if it was actually DMX, but it was either DMX or DMX Light hip-hop. Some of it might have been Ja Rule because he's in the first movie, but anyway, it's all blurred together. Like it truly is this snake eating its own tail from like movie 1 to movie 8/9, which I feel like I've seen now watching the trailer twice. But,
I imagine there will be a government organization and that the crew will be recruited to do something for them.
Yeah. Where do you get that idea? Is that like a pattern or something?
No clue. And there'll be moments of family because the one that's coming out is the enemy is Dom or Vin's brother. Played by none other than John Cena.
Yeah, it's gonna be family v family, and I think, like we were saying while watching the trailer, like, is this gonna be something about is blood thicker than water or whatever like that?
Well, obviously the two brothers will eventually team up.
I think it's pretty obvious. I mean, if they can turn the undercover cop Paul Walker and the federal agent The Rock and the like lone wolf terrorist Jason Statham, if they can subsume all of them into their family, surely Vin Diesel can get his own brother into the family. But maybe they'll surprise us. Who knows?
Maybe these movies are really about treating everyone like family.
Which, if you buy at all the metaphorical reading I put on it about like the family being a corporation, it's kind of terrifying.
A little bit.
Because it's just saying like we want to gobble up the whole world and make it part of ourselves.
Everyone will be part of our system.
I mean, I know that probably sounds so ridiculous when you think about what is literally happening in these movies, but like, I don't know, I don't think it's that far of a reach of a sort of film theory reading. But how about we make some predictions about number 9, because I have a feeling that you and I are going to watch the 9th one after this. And,
of course we are.
Have to do an episode on it. So the thing I'm most interested in, or one of the things at least, is will the Charlize Theron cyber terrorist? Because in the trailer it looks like she teams up with Vin Diesel's brother, who is like seems to be the main enemy of the film, main bad guy. But will she be turned, like all the other villains have been in the past, into being part of their ever-growing family? What do you think?
I think it's possible, but I think they're beyond her and John Cena, or Vin's brother. Yeah, there has to be another villain operating for the shadows for those villains to really decide to switch sides. I think that's a bigger enemy to fry.
That's probably definitely the case, but maybe that villain is still just Charlize Theron, and maybe she recruits the brother against Vin as a real fuck you to him. It's so funny we keep calling him Vin like he's our fucking friend, but anyway, it's just shorter than saying Vin Diesel. Yeah, I think the movies have been so ridiculous. Like when they integrated Statham into their family, I was like, okay, then anything is like anyone can be brought into this then, because he had a real like personal reason for hating them.
Well, like every star they get into the franchise, they have to keep that star coming back to the franchise.
I mean, that's like the franchise's logic for sure. But within, like, on the level of the screenplay logic, so they just shoehorn it in that way. They're just like, well, what if they're just friends now? Instead, like, why couldn't they just have, like, an ongoing, like, enemy battle? But I guess the reason is because...
A rival family of street racers?
Well, because they need to have a new villain for each movie, I guess.
A rival family of street racers. One family of street racers gets more and more on the side of the federal government, while the other family becomes more and more enfranchised with the mob.
But the street racing stopped by like the 4th movie at best.
That's true.
There was no more street. There were car chases. But even the car chases themselves basically went down to about. At least I stopped noticing them, but maybe they were all just becoming white noise in my brain.
Was the last race I remember was the Cuba scene. I think they were racing in Cuba at least. Over like some Cuban cars.
It was like the bet. It was a bet about the car, and Vin Diesel was racing a real piece of shit car just to prove that he could win even using a bad car. And then No, that was the 8th movie.
It's not about the car, it's about the driver.
Right. And yeah, you're right. That was the Cuba scene in the beginning of the 8th movie. And that's another like very they do try to make the villain sort of the pro-capitalist mindset one in the scene where Vin Diesel ends up not taking the car away from the guy that he beat in the race and basically being like this benevolent, like generous guy to him. And Charlize Theron's character, Cypher, she's like, "What the fuck, you pussy? Why did you do that?" And I guess it's just supposed to be showing that she's evil or whatever. But like, I don't know, man. I think by the 9th one, there's a good chance she's gonna be right there within the family alongside the Rock, Statham. Sadly, R.I.P. No more Paul Walker. But
I mean, one of the interesting things about all these movies that I know we talked about while watching them is that they have a very diverse cast.
That's true. They have the real like all the races of the rainbow situation.
Unlike the Avengers.
True. Yeah. I mean, Avengers try to like play with that, but yeah, it's mostly pretty homogenous.
It's a little white.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know why that is. I mean, maybe because Vin Diesel seems sort of like of vague ethnicity. I don't know.
And at least the main female characters eventually stopped. Well,
you said you thought it passed the Bechdel test.
I don't think.
And I said
anymore,
I don't think so.
it does. But I do think that Michelle Rodriguez's character becomes a bit of a strong character by the end of it. After she gets over amnesia. I don't actually know if she ever gets over amnesia.
I think he fell asleep before any of that was resolved, if it ever was. See, I don't even remember, and I watched all of it. But yeah, I mean, she is. She's meant to be a badass from the beginning. She becomes a little sort of like squishy at certain points. Like, I think her and Vin Diesel sort of settle down a bit more, but I guess that's not necessarily like...
That just means that Dom is softening.
Yeah, I guess so.
Family's getting weak.
Well, family, right? Family. That was the word I couldn't, like, when I was getting really, like, kind of loopy from watching these movies for too long, I just kept saying the word family and Corona. And it was sort of amusing to me, probably to no one else. It became like a verbal tick at one point. Like anytime I saw Vin Diesel's face, I would just go, family. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. I don't know how much else I have to say about the movies, period. I think we covered that pretty well, unless you got something else. But about the experience in general, I don't know.
Would you recommend this marathon to anyone? Do you think it's a smart thing to watch all these movies back to back if you've never seen them?
I think if you've got a good friend by your side like I did, okay. I would say yes. If you're alone, hell no, you will possibly commit suicide. But if you're with the right like group of people or another person, and you have, the right sort of chemicals sloshing around inside of you, whatever your choice is there, sure, why not? Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's interesting. I mean, I would have a strong warning of the first 3 movies are kind of unbearable, even if you're like watching them and laughing at them, making fun of them. It's painful. Like, you really just want, especially if you know from like what you've heard from other people, that like, around the 4th or 5th one they start to get more like absurd and like good bad rather than bad. It will just make you like wish you could fast forward. I was tempted to just like skip ahead to the 4th or 5th one a lot during the first 3. But all that being said, sure, with the caveats I gave it, I recommend this insane movie marathon. And if you're listening to this by the time the 9th one's out, throw that 9th one in there too. What do you say?
I would recommend it. It's under mostly the same pretenses.
Okay.
Probably skip the second one and the third one. Maybe watch the first one just to get a sense of
You
who
gotta
the
see
family is.
Agreed. I think you can't skip the first one, but that might be the ideal way to do it, is because the second one doesn't have Vin Diesel. It just has Paul Walker, who, if I didn't say it already in the episode, is one of the most sort of
He's
frighteningly wooden actor. Like, wooden is the only word that kept coming to mind. Like, and the harder he tries to emote, the more wooden he becomes somehow. Which
is very American of him.
Yeah. I did notice he seemed to get a little bit better at acting as the movies went on.
He's had more practice.
But there might have also just been like better directing or something going on, or maybe slightly better written dialogue or something. But he wasn't as painfully wooden by, I don't know, the last one he was in.
He'd been through a few quarter miles by then.
I live my life a quarter mile at a time. Is that like that? Besides the word family and Corona, is that the most famous like catchphrase from?
I feel like it is. It's the one that sticks out in my head the most.
Oh no, the big one is I don't have friends, I have family. Anyway, I think we're sort of going in circles here to evoke a race car metaphor. Spinning our wheels, so to speak. I don't know if I have anything else to say. If I do, it's like long lost somewhere in my brain now. Final thoughts?
I doubt I'll ever watch these movies again.
Me too. I think I'm definitely gonna watch the 9th one though.
I think I will watch the 9th one.
I think
I have to now.
It's a heat death of the universe guarantee that we will be back with our take on the 9th movie.
Saying there's ever another movie released.
Right. I mean, probably won't be seeing it in the theater, but that's fine. These movies are too loud, by the way. The grouchy old man in me kept getting annoyed by how loud the car scenes were compared to the dialogue scenes, but
so it goes.
I got nothing else to say. I think I keep saying that, and then we keep saying more shit. Moving on till next time.
Moving on till next time.
All right.
The first voice recording was made in 1860. It was a 10-second fragment of the French folk song Au clair de la lune recorded by inventor Edward Leon Scott de Martinville. But who will make the final voice recording and when? What will it be? Who will hear it?
Alright, so now that we've talked for a while about a questionable at best quality movie franchise,
it was at least a quarter mile of talking.
Jesus.
Okay, I'll stop myself eventually.
Yes, we recorded a quarter mile at a time, and because we talked about this movie franchise, this wildly popular one, I'd like to recommend a film that is, I guess in some ways the exact opposite of these movies or any kind of big action blockbusters, but it's a movie I really, really like, called The Saddest Music in the World. It's from 2003, directed by a I don't know, a sort of cult. Do people even use that word anymore about art? I will. A cult director named Guy Maddin, this Canadian film director. He's known for making these movies that use a lot of like film techniques from like the silent era and like the 1930s and maybe 1940s. Like a lot of them are in black and white with like Vaseline like smeared over the lenses and just very sort of otherworldly, out of time films. They're usually pretty surreal. This movie has a really great cast. The star is Isabella Rossellini, and the other star is Mark McKinney, best known from The Kids in the Hall, who I'd never seen in.
Excellent. I don't think I've seen him in a serious movie.
It's a really good movie if you haven't seen it.
I haven't seen this movie.
Let's maybe watch it later today. I could even watch it today. It's about, like, basically the plot is that Isabella Rossellini's character, she owns, like, a big beer company in Winnipeg, and the company has this contest called the Saddest Music in the World, where literally the contest is to find the saddest music in the world. So this is during the Depression in the 1930s. And groups of musicians from all around the world come to Winnipeg to try to win this contest. I forget what the prize is exactly. It's probably cash or maybe a bunch of beer. No, actually, I'm seeing here in the summary $25,000 in Depression era money, as
that's like millions.
It's specified in the movie as, that's kind of a funny, like, self-aware thing. Is I remember she says, "You'll win 25,000 Depression era dollars." Like, why would you say that while you're in the Depression? But anyway, and it's just really funny and sad at the same time. Like, it's a genuinely moving movie to me, and it also makes me laugh, like belly laugh, because there's just so much like absurd, surreal stuff going on. Like, for example, Isabella Rossellini's character lost her legs. I don't remember how. I haven't rewatched this for a while, but she replaces her legs with two glass legs that are hollow and filled with beer. Her company's beer.
Excellent.
And she's also like an ex-lover of Mark McKinney's character, who is a real like sleazy businessman type, like a con man, businessman type. And they end up sort of rekindling their romance, but there's really no point in going too far into the plot in this recommendation. I'll just say it's a really strange, beautiful, sad, wonderful movie with, like, all the acting is great from top to bottom. The directing is super unique and interesting. Yeah, it's got everything you want, really, in a weird way. I never thought I'd say that about this movie, but it kind of does. Like, at least, like, on an emotional level. The thing that makes this movie stand out to me so much personally also is that it's the only time ever in my life that at least that I can remember. Maybe I did this as a kid with some movie, but I don't remember doing it. The second the movie was over, after watching it the first time, I pressed play and rewatched it right away again without like any break in between, because I knew
that's high praise.
I knew I had to see it again. Like, it's a beautiful movie, and Guy Maddin is great in general. This is probably my favorite movie by him, though, but he does some really interesting stuff. I recommend checking him out just generally as well. Yeah, I think that's all I got to say about it. The Saddest Music in the World. Great film. How about you, Jason?
I guess I have two recommendations that I'm going to tie together.
Nice.
So, as everyone knows, there's a pandemic going on. So So I'll start my recommendation with just stay inside. If you can, stay inside. Try not to go out. And on that note, I have said a quarter mile more during the past hour than I think I have in my entire life. And the best burger you can get from McDonald's is a quarter pounder. I am not recommending the quarter pounder, but smash burgers are great. And if your area has like a good place to eat a smash burger, restaurants are kind of hurting right now. as far as business goes. Like, I know some restaurant owners, and maybe order one for delivery.
Wait, what? I don't know what that is.
Smash burger is like a hamburger, but the burger's ultra thin, so it's almost crispy when you bite into it. And in my opinion, they're the best kind of burgers you can eat.
Honestly never heard of that in my whole life. It sounds kind of weird, to be honest, but I'll take your word for it.
You've probably had one and not realized it was a smash burger.
A crispy patty, though?
The outer edges are usually crispy because they get it thin enough to where it's crispy.
Interesting.
The middle's a bit burgery, but yeah, it's a smash burger. I highly recommend, if you haven't had a smash burger, you should have one. Right. And if you have, you already know they're good, so try to find one, support your local restaurant, and stay inside.
Those are 2 very solid recommendations. 3 if I include my own. So I say we order a couple smash burgers, stay in, and watch saddest music in the world.
Excellent.
All right.
So
long farewell.
Not too long until the eventual heat death of the universe.
We're going to keep that alive, folks, it seems. Yeah.
Not too long now.
Live your life 1/4 mile at a time with
Stay
your
awake.
family and with a ice cold Corona. See ya.
He walked out in the gray light and stood, and he saw for a brief moment the absolute truth of the world. The cold, relentless circling of the intestate earth. Darkness implacable. The blind dogs of the sun in their running. The crushing black vacuum of the universe. And somewhere 200 animals trembling like ground foxes in their cover. Borrowed time and borrowed world and borrowed eyes with which to sorrow it.
And lo, for the earth was empty of form, and void, and darkness was all over the face of the deep, and we said, look at that fucker dance.
I don't have friends. I got family.
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 Family?
Family. Family.
Your family.
There's all kinds of family, Brian.
Disrespecting my whole family.
And now you found your family with these drift nuts.
Sinhan was family.
I'm so sorry that you ripped my family apart. Family?
Look at our family now.
I already lost my family once.
Family just got bigger. There's always room for family.
We're family.
Now, I know you guys are a family, so I'm offering you a chance right now to make that family whole again.
You want to make this family whole again?
You don't turn your back on family.
Your code is about family. That's the only way you're gonna keep your family safe.
Brother never told you never threaten a man's family?
This is your family. This is my family.
Thank you for the little angel, the newest addition to our family.
Almost killed my family.
Hosting his family in the Dominican Republic at his vacation.
You need to stop him before he does any more damage to our family.
Never should have messed with a man's family.
More importantly, you and your family don't go to any more funerals.
Han was my family too.
But what's real is family. Your family. I don't have friends. I got family.
This crew is about family. We've only got one chance to make this family whole again.
You gonna turn your back on family?
Salute me, familia.
Salute.